Cancer Council New South Wales acknowledges the traditional custodians, both past and present, of the land on which we live and work. Hello and welcome. My name is Jill Mills, and tonight we'll be talking about how to work towards getting back to feeling normal after cancer treatment. So first, we've got a little bit of housekeeping. So if you've experienced any technical problems, you can see in the chat box there's a 1800 733 416 number to call. And if you have any trouble hearing at all through your computer, if you dial the 1800 896 323 number, or there's the other number there, and enter the passcode, you can listen through your telephone. So we want to hear from you in that chat box tonight, which you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. We encourage you to participate, support each other, tell us what you thought about the information that we're presenting, whether you can relate or not. Was the information useful to you? Do you think you could actually use some of the things that are mentioned in your day-to-day life? And also, if you've got any questions that you'd like to pose to us when we get to the question time, or even during the webinar, because we're doing things a bit differently than usual, we're happy to address those questions throughout the webinar. So during the last 15 minutes, we sort of have the formal question time. A lot of you asked a lot of questions when you registered, so we sort of put them into themes and we'll be addressing those common themes. So it's being recorded. We'll email you a link to everyone that registers. So don't get distracted by the chat box. If you're worrying you're missing out on the information, you can always watch it later. So let's see. And also, if at any stage you really need to speak to someone urgently, please call Lifeline, available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 13 11 14 is the number to call. So let's get started. So I'd like to introduce you to our panel. So we have next to me Aaron Likely, who is going to talk about his experience after cancer treatment. Maxine Rosenfield, who is a counsellor, and Dr. Alicia Thornton-Benko, a mouthful, thank you, GP in private practice. And just off screen is Annie Miller, who's going to be working on the chat box tonight. So ask her questions, she'll answer them, and she'll be passing questions to us. See, she said hello, so say hello to Annie. So as we go through the webinar. So we're going to start off with Aaron now, and he's going to tell a little bit about his story. So over to you, Aaron.
Thanks, Jill. Hello, everyone. Just a little bit about myself before I get into my story. 44 years of age, married with 3 children. I thought, in terms of talking about getting back to normal, there's lots of discussions that we have at the Cancer Council, because I do volunteer work at the Cancer Council as well with the Living Well After Cancer program and also peer support. I'm talking about the new normal. So I thought I would tell my story in that context. So prior to me being diagnosed with cancer, my situation was that I was married with 2 beautiful children and lived out in the Lower Blue Mountains, and worked really hard, and my wife was a stay-at-home mum. And so that was basically my normal at that particular point in time. In March of 2006, though, I was diagnosed with grade 2 testicular cancer. So that was quite a shock to the system when that diagnosis occurred, and took me quite surprised. Being a guy in my 30s at the time, you don't expect to be hit with cancer at that age. And so that was quite a shock, not just to me, but to my wife and obviously to the family unit. Through that process, I had 3 rounds. I had an orchiectomy, which to remove my right testes. I had then 3 rounds of chemo, which was a real mental challenge for me. Not only did it hit me physically, but mentally it was very, very tough. I remember my oncologist telling me at the time, "You're young, Aaron. You can handle it." So, but I didn't. I really struggled with that mentally. And then after that, I had a retroperitoneal lymph node dissection, which is quite a mouthful. But because I had a stage 2 cancer, I had 2 small tumours that hadn't reduced in size after my chemo, so it was best thought to remove those through the operation. During that process, I had 7 months off work, so there was lots of pressure in terms of my career. Luckily for me, though, I had a really understanding work and and my boss was fantastic at that time. So I took a large amount of sick leave, and I'd been working for that company for about 10 years at that particular point and not had a sick day in my life. And my company at the time said, we'll honour all your previous untaken sick time. So I was very, very fortunate to be able to be still paid through that period of time. For 7 months without any pay, it would be a real struggle for most families, as it would have been for us with mortgages, etc. It's often said that, you know, with these types of major traumas in your life, that with your relationship with your wife, it either brings you together, or if there's existing cracks in your relationship, sometimes it will tear you apart. So unfortunately for me at that particular point in time, my wife and I decided to go into marriage counselling as she wanted to separate. So that was like, I felt like I was being kicked while I was down, and that was a really tough time for me. So we went into marriage counselling in November of 2006, and that was a blessing in disguise for me, because I got dragged into that. Being a guy, I thought, you know, didn't want to know. So got dragged into that, but that was a godsend for me. The counsellor that we had was fantastic, and it really helped for me personally deal with the anger and the emotion of all that process. Although in March of 2007, when we agreed to separate, the counsellor said, "Aaron, I think I still need to see you on a regular basis outside of the marriage counselling now," which I happily agreed to, and for me it was, you know, invaluable. So that's sort of a bit about my history. Now, post cancer, I was separated. Got to see my children only on the weekend, lost my house, and had a few challenges, because basically I was starting at zero. But I had this saying in my mind of, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail, which is old Benjamin Franklin saying. And I like that saying a lot, because no one plans to fail. But people often do. So I put a rough outline together in my head about, well, how do I get back onto my feet, and what do I need to do, and how do I go about this? So you can see up here on the screen that I've got a few points about what I put together in terms of, you know, getting back to normal. So some of the things I talked about was getting fit and healthy, getting mentally fit, and getting fit and healthy and mentally fit to me tie together as well, because if you're healthy physically, then mental fitness comes from that as well. I swore off women. I hated women. I said, there's no women ever for me again. I'm just going to concentrate on my kids. Women can go take a running jump. With my grandfather, I had a connection to Kokoda. So one of the things that I always said I was going to do was do the Kokoda track. So I said, stop saying you're going to do this, Aaron, because you've been saying you're going to do this for the last 15 years, and actually do it. So I put plans in place for that, and then there was some travel that I wanted to do, because I'd never really travelled outside of Australia. Travelled extensively within Australia and New Zealand, but never really outside of those particular areas. And then I was looking at my career, because I was very unhappy in my work, and I was in a role where I was dealing with people complaining all day, every day. And when you go through your cancer experience, things are put in a different perspective, and you decide that some things are worth worrying about and some things aren't. And I just wanted to scream at people when they ring me up about these silly little things. I wanted to say to them, but this is so not important. Like, there are better things for you guys to be worried about than this. And so that was doing my head in for quite a while when I was going back to work.
There's a question up there from Jenny asking, does counselling have a bearing on your planning process? All that counselling that you had, or was it just the way you are?
It didn't have a bearing on my planning process, other than I was discussing my plans with my counsellor. But what my counselling enabled me to do is be in a mental state of mind to actually think forward, rather than being inwardly thinking the whole time. And if I hadn't done counselling, I would have sort of been inwardly thinking the whole time, and it would have been very hard for me to look up and look around and go, well, hang on, there's a big world out here.
Did it help you?
Yeah. So not specifically in the planning, but just being aware that I should be looking forward.
And can I just ask as well, it was very good timing because I was about to ask you a question about at what point did this plan come into being? So you completed treatment, you're having the counselling and what have you, but how many months after you completed the treatment did you actually feel in a good enough state to actually come up with such a concise plan, or was it evolving over time? Or
yeah, it wasn't. This plan didn't just materialise on day one. It did evolve over time. The things about getting fit in Kokoda and travel were sort of there, and getting a tattoo amazingly was there from day one as well. But some of those other things sort of evolved. So, you know, the work career thing, I'll come to that in a little few slides on, but it's evolved. And the No Women, again, I'll talk a little bit more about that. There's a story there as well. Yeah. And I think that's a really good point about a plan. A plan is, you know, you have it as a framework. You know, I don't think anyone should put a plan in place that is not achievable either. Yeah. Some people put plans in place and it's like, you know, I'm going to climb Mount Everest, but, you know, if you've got some impediment for doing that, then that's not going to happen, and it's sort of an unrealistic plan. So you sort of build on these things. So and Kokoda sort of went hand in hand with being fit physically, because obviously you have to have a reasonable level of fitness to be able to do Kokoda. So that sort of went hand in hand as well.
So you're talking sort of months to...
Yeah, so it was probably the early part of 2007 I started doing this, and it was probably over the first 3 months of the year that I really started thinking about this, yeah, so that's sort of how it came to fruition.
And you felt like you'd recovered from the chemo, and at this point?
The 3 rounds of chemo was an interesting process for me, because 2 rounds I had 1 level of mix of drugs, and that knocked me around really, really bad. And as I mentioned before, mentally it really hit me as well. And I had a silly situation just because I was meant to go to the Nepean Cancer Centre and get my treatment there, but then that was full, so then I had to go up to the oncology ward at Nepean Hospital, which was absolutely terrible because I was with people who were dying. And so that was just, the whole thing was just a real mental struggle for me. So so like I just went to I said to him, I can't do this for my 3rd round, and he said, actually I can tweak the mix a little bit, and he did, and it was like chalk and cheese for me. That last round of chemo, I was actually feeling fantastic about day 15 of the 21-day cycle, and whereas the first 2 rounds, day 21, I was barely lifting my head off a pillow and being able to sort of get out of the bed and walk downstairs. So it's amazing. When I get asked about chemo in my peer support thing, I just say it's so individual, and the effects are so personal. And so I was up and around pretty quickly after my last round of chemo, but then I had that big operation following that sort of pushed me back again. So yeah. So it's all very well having a plan, but you've got to put it into action.
You did.
It's a bit, plans can be a bit like that New Year's Eve resolution. I'm going to lose weight this year, and I'm going to go on that diet and all that sort of thing. And of course, you never do, and it never happens. And it's just like, oh, I'll do it again next year, and all those different types of things. So for me, it was really, really super important that I actually followed through on this. And obviously, Kokoda was absolutely fantastic. And there was a few people. So some of the photos you're seeing there is me and a good mate of mine, Chris, who I've known since primary school. And he'd been wanting to do this for a long time as well, and we'd been talking about it for ages. And then I had a brother-in-law who's a travel agent, and he knew that I wanted to do this as well. And so the 3 of us got talking, and he said, we can make this happen. So we did. Yeah. So that was fantastic. It was a very emotional experience getting to the end. It was just of relief, and if anyone who's done that out there, it's just it's a hard 8-day slog, but a truly rewarding experience, and it really made me appreciate what my grandfather would have gone through having participated in that, and just the incredible endurance that those guys would have had back in the day.
Yeah.
So we had all the modern camping equipment and hiking boots and all this other sort of stuff, and it was still hard. So these guys were definitely using equipment that was way behind what we have these days. And
and John's asking, were you sponsored for the trip?
No, it was a very personal, private thing for me. I didn't want anyone to make a big deal out of it. So other than Chris and my brother-in-law Brett, no one else even on the trip knew that I was coming from cancer and coming back. I shared it with the guys at the end when we all finished and went back to Oz and back to Cairns. I think we flew back into, and everyone had a beer and then we all patted me on the back. But I didn't want to make it wasn't a big deal for me. I wasn't trying to get recognition from that. I just wanted, it was just my little personal thing. And that was what was important to me. So
I'm assuming that helps you feel as well.
Yeah, it gave me huge amounts of confidence. Because I went, well, this is a hard thing for anybody, regardless of whether you've just come back from cancer treatment or not. So to be back in that sort of doing that type of thing was, huge confidence builder for me, and mentally it was, I came back feeling like refreshed and
ready to go.
So the next slide. So plans into action, and you might remember one of my plans was no women. So
we didn't believe it.
Yeah. So in April of 2007, I started seeing my now wife Wendy, and it was interesting because I still had that thing of no women, and Wendy was about to travel for work at the end of 2007. And when we started seeing each other, I knew she was traveling, and she had known my story as well, and knew I wasn't looking for women. And so we were very convenient for each other. And that was really, really nice because we went into that relationship with no expectation of any sort of longevity or commitment or any of those types of things, but we treasured every day because we knew at the end of 2007 she was going to go off to England for 2 years for work. And so quite unexpectedly we fell in love. So that was nice. And then we had the problem of she was going to go overseas for 2 years. So
a new problem.
A good
problem.
And so we did a long distance relationship from October 2007 to June 2009. So we lasted 18 months doing a long distance relationship. And thank God for video conferencing and things like that, because that's basically what we did every day. Jumped on Skype or Messenger or one of those, and actually really, really good to be able to do. It's cheap because all you're using is your data on your existing internet connection, so it doesn't cost you anything really. And it got Wendy and I in a process of just talking every day about what we did and how things were going and the challenges that we were both facing at the time, and so that was nice. But we used her being in London as an excuse for me to go. We would meet halfway or somewhere over there, and we would travel every 6 months. So that was one of my other goals. So right by accident, one of my big plans was to travel more, and then all of a sudden with Wendy being overseas, that was a great way for me to execute that plan and an excuse to go off and do that. The other great side of, I shouldn't say great side, the other side of Wendy being overseas and us in a long distance relationship was the other part of that plan was for me to concentrate on my 2 kids from my marriage, and so that enabled me to I was living on my own obviously through that time, and I quite treasured that time being on my own and just concentrating on myself and making sure the relationship with my children was where I wanted it to be, because up until that point in time I had sort of drifted away in terms of being close with my children. And when you're going through your chemo, you get told not to hug your kids and all these different types of things, and you've got to flush the toilet twice and all this sort of stuff, right? And my kids were only 5 and 2 at the time, so really little. And so my oncologist was like super stressing to me about especially a little one, don't hug him too much and don't be too close. So that was really hard to deal with. Having them there in the house and being sick but not being able to give them a cuddle and doing all those types of things. And then when we separated, I saw them even less. So that wasn't obviously what I wanted, but that's what we have to deal with, and sometimes you just have to sort of move forward the best way you can. So, yeah.
May I ask a question I think possibly a lot of people are thinking about is with the new relationship with Wendy, when it was new, obviously you've been through this, amazingly difficult experience and life-changing experience. How did you broach that important topic about your experience of cancer to Wendy?
So she was aware of my story before we met.
Right.
And so that was easy to raise that as a topic. I had a few body issues though, because I have keloid scarred from my thing, so I had a huge big mark up and down my tummy. So I was always nervous about people seeing that and what people would think of that, and I actually, as I said to her, I said, I'm really nervous about us ever being intimate, because I said I'm really embarrassed by the scar. And so we had conversations about all that different type of thing, and it's just communication, and it's not easy, and it's not natural for, especially for us blokes, to be open and talk about those types of things. But I've had but yeah, it was a lot of that. So I was just learning that communication was the key, and you put it out there, and sometimes you get what you want back, and sometimes you don't. And if you don't, then you need to make decisions about whether that's the right person or relationship for you. So, but it's not easy, and it's not what you sometimes you want different outcomes. So yeah.
Some of your beautiful photos from your travels.
So yeah,
the happy couple.
Yes, I was taking a picture there in Egypt where I just proposed to Wendy, and she comes up cheekily and just chucks the engagement ring in front of the camera. So I put that in there because that made me laugh. And we had our honeymoon in Vietnam, and there's pictures of Ireland and Paris and Italy and Morocco and Croatia and Turkey and all these fantastic places. Yeah, so very blessed and very fortunate to be able to do that, because not many people can, and so I'm very much aware of the fact that I was luckily financially able to do that, and in a situation where I could be away from home and do all those types of things. So, yeah. So a little update on the plan. I thought, well, a plan's always evolving, so it's never stays still and it's never static. I don't have my tattoo yet, but I have the design. Oh. It's a Celtic wheel, and it's called the Wheel of Tyrannus, and it's has courage and strength written in Celtic across the top and bottom, which I'm very keen to look at and get. Wendy's totally fine with me getting this tattoo, by the way. So the only thing stopping me is me.
We had Raymond asking, how did the tattoo help you? Well, you haven't actually done it yet.
No, I haven't done it yet. Yes.
No. Not sure yet.
But just going through the design and talking about that and picking that design, it was very cathartic, and just again, courage and strength and all those different types of things. It just was very enabled me to reflect and think about where I'd come from. Some exciting things happening with work and career, but I won't bore people with that now. And as I mentioned there, it's time for me to sort of revise all my plans now, because most of the things I had on that plan have now all come to fruition and have achieved. So, yeah,
fantastic.
Very exciting.
Good, yeah. Within 10 years.
So what worked for me? So the plans and goals, action the plan. Review and refine the plan, and don't get discouraged if the plan fails. And for me, the plan failing was meeting Wendy. So
that was a good fail.
That was a good fail, wasn't it? The other big thing that I think is important is balance and moderation. And this sounds like such an obvious thing to say, but it's so important because we tend to go to an extreme quite often as us humans in terms of how we approach things. And the work-life balance is key to that, and I'm happy to say now that my work-life balance is far more balanced towards life than it is work, and I think that makes a huge difference to your mental outlook and how you interact with your kids and your family, etc. Obviously, exercise and food is hugely crucial to that, and good stuff in, good stuff out, and all those different types of things, and family and self. So involve yourself with your family, and you have a good family network and a friends network, then, you know, immerse yourself in that, but also take time for self, for you, away from all that as well. And again, it's that balance and moderation.
And if you haven't got any family, it's having a network of something, some sort of network, some people you know, just a couple.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Or support group or
Yeah, which is exactly the next point, right? So for me, it was a combination of counsellor, wife, Wendy at the time, and friends. So, and the other big thing that helped me and was huge was volunteering for the Cancer Council.
Right.
That was amazing for me because you get so self-centered on your own story that when you start hearing everyone else's story, you just go, wow, my story pales in comparison to what other people have gone through and their challenges. So it was a very humbling experience for me getting involved with the Cancer Council and giving back and helping
That's a happy family.
That's us today, yes. So Wendy and I have just had a baby recently. So Jackson, he's 8.5 months old now, so he's a bit bigger than that now. That's back in February 2015. So, yeah, really, really proud and love my family.
Right.
Yeah.
The older ones are very proud of that little.
They absolutely adore him. So he loves Jackson. He's very, very, very lovely.
So if anyone wants to make any comments in the chat box or ask questions, go for it. Comment on Aaron's story. So we're going to move now on to Maxine. And apparently you two need to speak up a little bit.
Oh, okay. All right. That's not usually problem being.
No.
Look, before I start though, can I just pick up on something that Aaron said, because when you had the experience of your relationship falling apart and having to go to counselling, and it's something that I've noticed that people, some of my clients, for example, who might be in the position of being the carer, who want to leave the person who's having the treatment, and the amount of guilt that they struggle with, and I think sometimes we're a bit quick to judge, and we're a bit quick to kind of say, well, how could you possibly not stand by someone who's having treatment? But I guess from your perspective, you might have some insight into that would help.
Yeah, so off the bat, I just want to be very public and say that my ex-wife and I have a really, really good relationship as of today. And I look back and actually think of her as a bit courageous rather than anything else.
Yeah.
Because of that very reason, that there would be an expectation in society that you would have to stand by and support someone with cancer, and you do that at all costs. And through the cancer journey for me, she was there.
Yeah.
And once, I could look back and I could almost see the day where she thought Aaron's better now. So I can step back. So it's a really, really valid point.
We've got a few questions coming up, but we might sort of save them for the question time and let Maxine, because we don't want to run out of time.
Okay. So I guess following on from that, and you've alluded to a bit of this, I think, Aaron, is that, people around you want to know that everything's fine. You've finished your treatment, you should be back to normal, everything should be going really, really well, and you might be feeling pretty awful. The side effects of treatment, you're worried about your scar, all those sorts of things that come into being. And again, there's a lot of pressure on, right, treatment's finished, let's tuck that away, put it in a box, out to the side, now, life. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on people who've just who are just finishing treatment, and in those first few weeks, few months even, trying to put on that face because people expect it of them when they still need support.
It can be a very isolating feeling, can't it, as well? Because that's really a time when they're really wanting people to feel that they're understanding what they've experienced and what they're feeling. And then sometimes they're feeling, I suppose, they can't actually even talk about it because...
Exactly. Can't talk about it because everybody wants it to be fine. On the other hand, there are people who want to put it in a box and go, I'm done with my treatment, pretend it never happened. And that's fine too. So we have to accept all parts of that spectrum, really. There might be a financial pressure to get back to work. I noted you said that, you had employers who were supportive, but obviously not everybody has that.
Definitely
so
not.
When you're not feeling great and you've got to get back to work, that's a huge pressure. And I think that can also take its toll on how long it can take to feel you're even up to it. But, you know, it's a fact. That's what has to happen sometimes. And the next point that I think comes up a lot in my work is people telling me that they're feeling, you know, like 50%, 80% well, but for the outside world, they have to put on the 110%. You've beaten cancer. You're cured. Those sorts of things. You're laughing.
Oh, because it's so true, and you're not, because even though physically you might be well, mentally you're a different person, and you've gone through, and it's actually hard to talk about with someone who hasn't gone through cancer, because it's a, I don't want to say this, but it's a bit of a club, and you really get that connection with someone who's gone through that journey because they understand it. And it's very hard for someone who hasn't to get that appreciation.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And you don't have lots of support around you. You have to find support, or you're isolated maybe geographically, you know, and you haven't got people close by. You haven't got a support group nearby that you can join. So that having to keep that act up takes a lot of pressure. And
it's draining.
Yeah. I can imagine it's very draining. And people saying you've got to have a positive attitude. And the number of people say, you've got to think positive. Don't think about the cancer anymore. Think positive. And of course, every time you say that, you go, oh, but how? It's not that simple.
And someone's saying, when did you start feeling normal? I know it's obviously different for everybody.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, and this is what we talk about in the Cancer Council, the new normal, because I don't think you ever feel normal again because, you know,
what is normal?
3 months ago, I had a little skin cancer cut out. This was the little basal cell skin cancer, which is a very common, not a big deal, but until I got the biopsy back, I was like, what if I have cancer again? And, you know, and you go down all that path, right? And but you're never normal.
And Aaron, I mean, you came through some side effects, but other people have to live with their side effects ongoing, and some things can't ever be fixed. Certain, you know, lymphodemas or other types of. So people have to change their lives quite radically. Not that you didn't do that, but, you know, people do as well for different reasons. So, you know, it's important. And then apart from all those sorts of things, you're craving something. And so currently, I'm finding quite a lot of clients coming in going, you know, you can't have anything with sugar because sugar causes cancer. It could, I mean, last year it might have been butter and margarine or eggs or something, but it's sugar at the moment. So sugar feeds cancer. So I have people, and we can actually debate in sessions things like, is it okay for me to have a cake? One cake or one biscuit? And that might sound bizarre to somebody who's never been through it, but when you're, you know, frightened constantly that, is it going to come back? And if I have that one cake, is my cancer more likely to come back? So that, that kind of fear, is very, very common. And I think working, you said about having balance, and really with my clients, that's what I'm trying to suggest, is have some balance, you know. One bit of sugar every now and again, rather than craving and spending mental energy on worrying about it. Maybe it's better to have that balance. Energy levels not quite as they were, and so some people will try and push themselves harder than they need to, in fact. You had a goal, the Kokoda track, but not everybody's going to do a goal quite like that. But even just getting the energy up so that they can go for a walk around the block instead of sitting around.
And that's how it started for me. Like after my last operation, the goal was to get to the driveway, and then the goal was to get to the edge of the block, and then the goal was to get around the block, and then the goal was to get around the block twice, and then it grew from there. But you've got to start small.
Realistic expectations.
Absolutely. And making sure those people around you understand that you've got to have realistic expectations. And then, of course, just as you think you're getting on with it, you've got a checkup due or a scan. You know, maybe it's every three months or whatever it might be, and the anxiety leading up to it, and then have those tests, and then having to go back to whatever your new life is, and then mental adapting again, and then another 3 months time, here it comes again. So that coping with that ongoing, roller coaster really, is something that I think I spend quite a lot of work with my clients working on, trying to help them manage those times. And sometimes people will say, I'm feeling so bad this week, I just don't know what's going on. And they'll say, well, okay, well, has anything happened? No, nothing I can put my finger on. I'll go, when's your next checkup due? So they're not connecting it, but it is having an impact, a subconscious impact.
And that came up in the questions, I think, as well. There was someone talking about that they're going fine, and then when they know the checkup's coming, they get anxiety and worry and
So learning some strategies, acknowledge that, realise that's what it is, and then some strategies to manage it is, I guess, a lot of what my work is now. With clients. And so emotional resilience is the buzzwords at the moment. How to develop emotional resilience, and again, it's something that happens gradually. For some people, it will come quicker than for others. For others, it can take months or even years. But emotional resilience is about things that you've actually said, supporting yourself through exercise. I reckon enough to be warm and a bit out of breath is enough, because it's just enough to get the circulation going. Don't have to go all out to do marathons. And then having some downtime, some good hobbies, yoga, meditation. The number of people who take up yoga and meditation as a result of cancer is, I've noticed quite a high proportion. A balanced diet, and I put including treats, because if you deprive yourself, then that becomes an emotional strain in itself, and that can't be healthy. So balanced diet, including treats, and supportive people. Dump anyone who can't be there in the way that you want them to, or in the way that you need, because really we don't have the time or the capacity for that. And you were talking about people ringing up in your old job with problems. You go, those aren't really problems. But it's the same thing. If you can't get support from people around you, you don't need to carry them anymore. So I guess those are the main messages that I work with my clients.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to Alicia.
Hello.
Thanks, Alicia.
All right. Well, they were some really good insights there. I'm going to just talk briefly about things from the GP perspective and just touch on a few different things. I mean, obviously getting back to your new normal, or getting back to a normal, you need to be able to exhale knowing that there's some follow-up medically in place. So first of all, you need some housekeeping, some essential medical to-dos. So really from the oncologist, I suggest that you make sure you get a summary of all the treatment that you've received. And you need to ensure that you've discussed that follow-up with your oncologist. So everyone's very, very clear on how often you need those checkups and what have you, and who's going to be overseeing those checkups. Is it the GP? Is it the oncologist? Is it a combination? And make sure you have a good GP. And if you don't have one that you're feeling that you have a good trusting relationship with, then ask a trusted friend, ask the oncologist, ask a fellow survivor for a recommendation, and then go and actually make that appointment with the GP. Then you need to inform the GP of your health situation, provide them a copy of that, treatment summary that you've, received from your oncologist, and also come up with an agreed plan of what the follow-up is, and also an understanding of when you really should represent to the GP or an oncologist, and that would be really if there was any new change or any concern. Once you do all of those things, then you know, well, there is a safety net in place. I can exhale, I can start sort of moving forward, because I know that from a medical perspective, I'm having some good follow-up.
And so what do you think though, again, I'm thinking of some clients that I've worked with here who feel that the GP, because they're not the cancer expert, that they shouldn't really, will they really get the best service from their GP?
It's a very, very good question. And I think it's a burgeoning area of who's managing follow-up with cancer patients. So it's a big watch this space. From my perspective, I mean, obviously you want a GP to feel comfortable with the situation. So when you're coming with that treatment plan, that follow-up plan and that treatment summary, and you're discussing openly with your GP, are you comfortable to oversee the recommendations? And I would hope that if the GP wasn't, for whatever reason, that they would be honest about that. But really, a GP is your advocate. a GP is that centralised person. Yes, they're not the specialist oncologist, but they really should be developing a really good relationship with the oncologist, with open, free communication, picking up the phone, writing letters, what have you. And look, that's in a perfect world, and there is some room for improvement. But that's what we're all here for. This is what we're about, and this is where the future is. So what I'm particularly passionate about. So I do feel that the GP sits in a great place because they're not just looking at the cancer, they're also looking at the general health screens, because just because you might have had, say, one particular cancer doesn't mean you can't go and have your, if it wasn't breast cancer, you still need to go and have your mammogram and what have you, or your pap smear. So you need those general other health screens. And psychologically, although we're not counsellors and psychologists, we can play a role with some debriefing and being that supportive person, and that's what I would encourage as well. So definitely you need to have the relationship with the oncologist, but I think the GP plays a very underutilised role, and it's about reframing really everyone's attitude and understanding of the role of the GP in these circumstances. And maybe some GPs need to upskill a little bit, but that's what we're working on, and that's what we're about at the moment. So I'd suggest making another appointment with that GP after that initial appointment about, this is what I've been going through, if the GP was unaware, and going back and really talking about what's going on. Are there side effects? How are you feeling psychologically? Do we need to refer you to a counsellor? What's going on with support groups? Making sure they're aware of the Cancer Council and the supports that are available. So I really think the GP has a pivotal role to play, and we need to be promoting it. I'm a little bit biased, but I really think that is the future, because we want people to have a new normal, and we want people surviving cancer, and we want them away from that tertiary treatment zoned hospital. We want you well in the community. So,
And actually, when you say that, well in the community, one of the things that people often say is they feel down. It's normal to feel.
It is normal,
whatever the word means, to feel low, miserable,
absolutely
depressed, call it what you will, after treatment.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't mean you need immediately to be going on to medication.
Correct.
And I guess sometimes it's felt that, well, maybe the GP was just going to write me a script. So what you're saying is,
no,
hopefully not.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if the GP is just going to hand you a script, then I'd suggest getting
another
recommendation. Yes. And the other thing I'm just going to throw in there is don't forget about the dentist. Certainly after some radiation treatment in particular, but head and neck, but it could be all sorts of things. So definitely dental health is important as well. So moving forward, you've got that safety net in place, and then there's obviously possible side effects of treatment. Now, some of them are temporary. Obviously, you still want to optimise their management, but I suppose psychologically it's easier to cope with if you know, well, this is just possibly going to last for a few weeks or maybe months, and But sometimes, thinking about talking with your GP about that, getting out and doing a bit of exercise, all those things that you both sort of talked about is important. And then there's those permanent side effects. And the reality is there are some serious permanent side effects of some cancers and the cancer treatments. And I think it's being honest with yourself that, when you actually need some support and when you actually need to get that added bit of information. I mean, obviously you want to talk to your GP and the oncologist about what is expected and optimising the situation, optimising the treatment. Because there are options out there, and sometimes people aren't even aware that there are options, and they go and see the specialist or in the GP, and they're too scared to actually talk about that incontinence or what have you. And maybe if you just, I urge you to actually speak and open up about these things, not to feel embarrassed, because there is help out there. It doesn't mean it's going to solve the problem or take that permanent side effect away, but at least give yourself the opportunity of optimising its management.
Yeah.
And then accepting that you have optimised it, and maybe there is still a quality of life issue because of it. And then that's when we need to, speak to the GP, see a counsellor, some acceptance therapy, and changing that mindset from constantly trying to fix the problem to learning to accept, well, this is a part of me now, a part of this new normal. I'm not that happy about it, but I'm going to get help and support to accept it. And then seeing all the things that you can actually achieve and still do and still gain a quality of life. But I think you're not able to get to that new normal until you actually get to the point of acceptance, which is where some good counselling can play a role.
Yeah.
And then talking about psychology, I mean, then there's lots of psychological side effects, some temporary, some permanent for years to come, that's up and down, you know, the fear of recurrence, coping with the whole experience, feeling alone, feeling misunderstood, coping with loss, grief reactions. And I think, not that we're using the word normal a lot, but they are expected reactions. Everyone is individual. Some you'll experience, and don't worry if you don't experience it, but lots of people do. There is support out there and there is no need to feel alone, but sometimes you do need that extra little bit of help getting through these rough patches. And as time goes on, you'll recognise that you're actually, you're learning to live with those feelings a little bit more. But I think it's important to talk to your GP about that, talk to your counsellor, talk to the support group, talk to the Cancer Council, get the support that you need. And then over time, you gain the skills to cope with it. And then in turn, you might not have to see the GP as often, and you can be a bit more of the driver of your follow-up. And that's empowering in itself. And that's a sign that you're actually healing. And that healing and that new normal is evolving. And I think that's the key for me, is that a new normal evolves. It's not just going to suddenly happen.
Absolutely.
It's an evolution over time, and you need to sort of not put too much pressure, expectation on yourself. When is my new normal? It's just going to, you focus on these different things and it will just gradually occur.
Absolutely right.
So I think sort of the other thing that we've mentioned, you know, setting aside time to reflect and actually allowing yourself to feel some of these uncomfortable feelings isn't always such a bad thing. It's when you start ruminating, it's controlling, obviously it goes into a bit more of a negative pathway, but allow yourself to reflect on things. Relaxation, doing things that you enjoy, make you happy, and socialising with those trusted family and friends, and, you know, being surrounded by supportive people.
The good one.
That's right. And there will be times, and I mentioned that as well, there will be times throughout where you will be disappointed with people, and that's difficult. And obviously, Aaron,
it's amazing. The people you think are going to be the best supportive people sometimes aren't, and the people that you have no expectation with at all are absolutely amazing, and you wonder how you got through without them.
But it's very true. It's a really commonly said. Do you know why? I'd
No.
love to find that out. And I really would, because it's a really common thing that's said. It's the people that you least expect to be there are suddenly there.
It's a deeper thing, isn't it? You know, there's a lot of superficial relationships that sustain us, and you know, we have good social times with people, but when the chips are down, when it's really tough, it's often those superficial relationships turn out to be just that, and it's
Confronting.
you learn.
So look, as I've just said with relationships, the other thing I was just saying, just trying to maintain those connections that we talked about, or if you have a religious group or whatever it is that works for you, that makes you feel connected. But don't overcommit, and particularly early on after treatment, because there is that limited energy certainly early on, and you need to explain this to those that you trust to avoid feeling that pressure or that too much is expected from you. So I think that's good to establish that with that open communication.
And if you're looking well, you might not be feeling well.
Yes, true.
So being able to say to people, I know I'm looking really good, but I'm having a bad day today, or I just don't feel up to it today.
Absolutely. And it's good to have those relations where you can actually say, and if I'm feeling like that, some people actually I find out there, they're almost scared to say something. Do you find that? And I think it's sometimes if you as the survivor sit someone down calmly and say that when I'm feeling like this, you know, it would be really helpful if you did this, or just listen to me out, or, you know, almost give direction. I know you don't always want to give direction, but sometimes just a little bit of direction will help you then give to them, they give to you.
It helps. It helps a lot. Absolutely.
So we've sort of really touched on my next thing about relationships. And you will learn a lot about yourself and obviously people in your life. And as I've just said, you know, I encourage open, calm communication. And if you feel a relationship has become negative and it's causing more strain, then is it really worth it? But if it is a significant relationship, I was going to ask, how do you actually dump it? But we'll get to that at the end after this. But if that strained relationship is a significant one, that's much more difficult. I went through that as well. And that's when, you know, seeing a psychologist, Relationships Australia, getting some input and how to sort of that forward. And I think being true to yourself, surrounding yourself with the love and positive healing energy, and that invigorates you. And then just nourishment, we've touched on that as well already. You know, trying to eat healthy and fresh food. Obviously, yes, allowing yourself to have the treat. It's okay. Limit the alcohol. And if you do need advice, there are experienced dietitians and nutritionists out there that can be much more specific about it. And I'd certainly come forward and mention that to your GP as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, actually, any of the complementary therapies that help people get through side effects of treatment are useful afterwards.
Absolutely.
And going to see a practitioner who understands about cancer and the treatment you've had is very important, so that, you know, you're making sure that the treatment's going to be safe.
Absolutely. I mean, some of those things can interact with active treatment, so you have to be very careful and always discuss and have open communication with the actual oncologist. Because a lot of times you really just need to have the active treatment and then attend to some of those things after. But it's just about being open and honest, and that's what I'd really encourage. And just maintain those regular follow-ups with the GP, even if it's a quick chat just to update, and those regular health screenings, I'd encourage that. I often have patients who just come and have a chat with how people are feeling, and it's really helpful for everybody. Listen to your body, seek review if you have concerns, know that you're not alone, there is support available. And then go and enjoy your life knowing you are a survivor, and use that knowledge that you've gained to contribute and enrich your life. Yeah.
And Aaron, how did you get involved with the Cancer Council? Because that's what you did after yours.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's an interesting story, because during my cancer chemo, it was recommended to me that I go and see a counsellor. So I said, yep, and that was a terrible, terrible experience for me. And after one visit, I decided, this is counselling, I don't want anything to do with it. And so when I got through that and then found a good counsellor, and I went, wow, this is what it should be all about. I then started, when I got through my treatment, I went, well, how do I would really like to be in a situation where I help someone not go through that same thing that I went through. And then I decided just jumped on the Cancer Council website to see what was there. And then all of a sudden I could see there was peer support, volunteer options, and then once I'd done that, there was some other things kind of about living life with cancer and being a facilitator, and I went, oh, I'd love to do that as well. So it just sort of progressed from there.
Because that's the thing with counselling, you really do, the patient and the client, you do need to really have a good rapport. I mean, same with the GP, really, anyone that you're entrusting to, you do have to feel that there is a good relationship and rapport there. And it doesn't mean necessarily that they're a bad counsellor, it might be, but if you don't feel it working for you, then that is not the right person for you, and you do need to change, for sure.
Okay, we're going to move on to the questions now. So we had a lot of questions, and we always get a lot of medical questions, which we're really not in a position here to answer those medical questions. And the advice is to go and talk to your oncologist specialist, GP, whoever it is that you're seeing at the moment, because specific medical questions really need to be answered by the people that know your whole history, so we can't really answer them here. But we do have some questions we've picked out. We had lots of themes. So the first question, I have a feeling Maxine wants to answer. So notice you've got a circle around So I'll read the question out. So how do you decide when to let go of trying to fix a problem and accept this as part of the new normal, which we've been talking about, even when it's severely cramping your life?
And you know, of course, the answer is that there isn't a right time to decide when to let go, but it's a matter of how long do you want to go on thinking in one way, and talking it through with a professional can help you see another perspective. And okay, if it's severely cramping your life and it's going to make changes, and they are changes that are going to be there for a long time, the sooner we can move from fighting it to going, okay, I don't like it, it's not what I want, but right now that's the best I can do, and immediately doing that makes a shift, an emotional shift that can make that problem change. And I've seen that happen time and time again. What do you think, Aaron, on that one?
Yeah, no, I agree. There is no, you don't wake up one morning and just go,
You can do it today.
Today I'm normal again. You know, this is my new normal, and this is it. Because it's always changing.
And I think, I totally agree with all that as well. I mean, once you've recognised that you've had open communication with all the treating health professionals, and you know you've optimised and done everything you possibly can, and the problem is still there and still affecting your life, but the reality is that it is going to be a part of your life, then yes, it is about accepting and then working with it rather than against it. And you might need some counselling help to get to that point, and that's okay. But once you get to that point and you really truly believe it, it might not cramp your life as much as you envisage right now.
True.
Easy for me to say. I know it's not always that simple, and there are some quite debilitating side effects, but the reality is, if you've done everything, the only realistic option to have, happiness and a future ahead and a new normal is working with it.
Yeah. And it's a process. Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah, which is the next question, is feeling down post-treatment normal? Absolutely. I think that's we all say that. Yeah. Whoever wants to ask that question, see it's normal. So
Very much so.
yeah.
And be kind to yourself and just accept those feelings and go with it, and surround yourself with those supportive people.
Yeah.
Talk about it. And it will change. It will improve.
One of our great cancer council colleagues, Carol, talks about Doona days, and it's a very good description of it's just a day where you feel down, want to jump under the doona and not get out for the day, and that's totally normal.
Yeah, and it's okay. About being kind and nourishing yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. But having said that, if you're having too many Doona days, and you are
if
not
the Doona day is the new normal, then that's not good.
That is not good. And if you are, and you have to get it before it gets to that point. So if you feel that it's actually, you ruminate, you're going over and over and over thinking about it, and you don't even have 5 minutes a day where you're thinking about something else, and you really can't face the day or even people, that's when, don't let it get worse than that. So act on that. There is Lifeline, there's a cancer counsellor, there's a GP, you do need to act on that. And if you don't have the energy yourself, get that one person who you do trust and say, I need your help. I'm going in the wrong direction. No.
Good advice. So we're going to probably go a few minutes over time, but everyone hang in there. And, no, it's fine. I think, all good information. So the next one, how do I talk to my family about how I feel? They don't want to know about any of my treatment anymore. I've had enough of it. What do you reckon, Aaron?
That's that's for a family to react that way. That would be very difficult to deal with. I was fortunate enough that the bulk of my family were very supportive and were always wanting to know about all my treatment. So I would be getting specialist help there. I'll be talking to a counsellor or my GP and saying, this is my family's reaction. How can you help me?
And families, and sometimes that is the family dynamic, and it might be the dynamic nothing to do with cancer. That might be the way it is anyway. But if you want someone to know what's happening for you and they don't want to hear it, you can't make them hear it. But you can find other people to talk to who will want to listen and support you.
I've just seen a little bit in the chat box there about the Doona days and busy mums. It's actually a very good point. The Doona days are fabulous concept, but when you're a mum, it's probably not reality. And my advice with that, I mean, it's very difficult, and sometimes if you're back at work and you're a mum, there's all these pressures. I suppose if you can negotiate with work, some reduced hours at different times, and just trying to look for different solutions where you might be able to have someone take the children for a couple of hours, or and that might not be the family or exactly the person you'd envisage, but if there's someone out there that's supportive, even there's sort of daycare things that you can give a week in advance. A little bit of notice run by the council, just anything for a bit of respite, talking to work, some HR people at work, you might be able to say, I'm just really exhausted at the moment, any way where I can just have a day off a week or work from home. So I know it's not an easy solution, but if you are feeling that you need a bit more time, I'd be suggesting trying to think about different options, or talking with someone who might have some ideas for you to help you.
Which is kind of leading into that last question, is there really a normal after active treatment, which we've talked about a lot, or is it just nice to have that thought? Just how do you break the cycle of feeling so rough, continuous treatment, radiation, and now ongoing medication, and get out and about? Some days it's really hard to find a new normal and want to get out walking after day at work and normal mum duties, like what you're talking about.
But we have to be realistic.
Yeah, it's not easy.
No, it's not. But we also have to value ourselves enough to be able to say, okay, even if I can just get an hour,
Better than nothing.
an hour I can do something useful with that. You know, whether it's sitting down, whether it's having a massage, whether it's whatever it might be. It's an hour when I'm not being called on by anybody else. So if we can't have a day, we can find an hour. Someone else take care of the kids just for that time.
And not to feel guilty about it. I think if you're really recognising that you really do need that time, which you probably very well do, you do have, no one's probably going to, particularly if they're busy and you're busy, no one's probably going to do and have it sort of on a platter for you. You're going to have to be proactive. So on a day that you do have a bit more energy, think it through, think up some options and you know,
And then the question before that was, how do you deal with everyone saying you look so well when you're actually feeling pretty bucket? I think we try to talk about it, haven't we, really? So anyone's got any, we've got like, run out of time actually. But if you've got a burning question, put it up in the chat box.
And just some of those specifics of the questions that link to the resource.
I'll mention that. So just in summary, very brief summary is about making plans, set goals, as Aaron was talking about. Look after yourself, both physically and psychologically. Both of them, really, you need to balance that. And again, balance and moderation, and get support and communicate. So it's kind of in a nutshell, to find this thing called the new normal. And, you know, it's different for everybody, I think is the message here.
And it's an evolution.
It's an evolving thing. It's like the plan, revisiting the plan and revising the plan. It's an evolving thing. There's a publication we have nationally called Living Well After Cancer, a book. It's available online. We've got some new ebooks. It may be an ebook as well, where you can put it onto your tablet. I think it is. So you just go to your Cancer Council website in whatever state you're in, and go to publications, and you can find this book. In New South Wales, we also run a Living Well After Cancer program. It's a 2.5-hour one-off workshop, which Aaron works at. Maxine actually helps train the facilitators, so they know all about it. But it's an excellent program, and often coming to lots of different towns around New South Wales. So again, 13 11 20 information and support is the number to call. Any queries or questions, anything that's come up for you today you want to find out about, from 9 to 5 they're open, please call them. And there's a website, and of course if there's anything that's upset you tonight, you need to talk to somebody, ring Lifeline on 13 11 14. So we will be emailing you all a link of the recording of the webinar. And we will also have a resource sheet. Obviously, we couldn't get to all the questions. We had so many. So we're going to have some links and things for some of the questions that people did ask that we may not have addressed tonight. So you can get some answers to some of your questions. And again, 13 11 20 is a good place to go to find some answers to questions. Now, we do have an exit survey. Please fill it out. It helps us plan for our future webinars and to make them more interesting for you. Thank you to all the panel. Your information and resources have been fantastic tonight, and hope you all enjoyed watching everyone out there, and see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.